They thought I'd raise a glass to another year of being their wallet, so I raised something sharper. A deadline. A toast, Vanessa declared, holding her crystal glass like a dagger disguised in lipstick. To the mother-in-law who pays the bills but will never be a real mother. The room froze. Silverware stalled midair. Daniel, my only son, studied his napkin as if it might offer instructions on how to grow a spine. I sat perfectly still, shoulders square, the way you learn to sit when you've signed payroll on Fridays and swallowed disrespect on Sundays. My name is Margaret Cole, 69 years old, widow, builder of two things, a construction company and a family that somehow forgot who poured the concrete under their feet. Vanessa smiled her sorority party smile, the one that looks generous until you count your rings afterward. Guests chuckled the way people laugh at fireworks after they realize the sparks are landing on someone else's hair. I dabbed the corner of my mouth with my linen napkin, not to tidy lipstick, but to keep from saying what decades of restraint told me not to say, that love without boundaries is just financing bad habits. 15 years, 15 polite robberies disguised as mom. Could you? 15 birthdays where the cake was always someone else's favorite flavor. 15 Christmases where my credit card did the caroling. Tonight was supposed to be my birthday dinner, Vanessa's idea. Which should have been my first red flag. She'd filled the dining room with her friends. People who said, "Margaret, you look amazing," in that tone that means, for your age, but never says it out loud. The candles flickered in their eyes like they were watching a show. They were. "Vanessa," I said, my voice level enough to pass a building inspection. "Thank you for the toast." She blinked, surprised I could speak English without translating it into wire transfers. Daniel finally looked up, hopeful I might crack a joke and let everyone off the hook. Instead, I reached into my clutch and slid a golden key onto the center of the walnut table. The sound, sharp, bright, final, cut through the dining room like a gavel. Daniel went white. "Mom," he whispered, the word wobbling, "tell me you didn't." I also placed a single page beside the key. Thick paper. My letterhead. Frank Miller, attorney at law, tucked politely at the bottom because I believe in manners. The first line read, 30 days to vacate the premises at 14 Maple Lane. All auxiliary credit facilities cancelled effective 8 a.m. tomorrow. MC. No one breathed. Even the chandelier seemed to hold its crystals. I stood. My black dress fell smooth and certain. The way steel rebar sits inside a slab, unseen. But deciding everything. "Vanessa," I said, "you've given so many toasts in this house. Consider this one, the last on my tab." A nervous titter from the far end of the table. Someone coughed out, "She's kidding." The way people say, it's just a small crack, while the foundation shifts beneath them. "I bought this house," I continued. "It is in my name. I have covered every bill. Every emergency. Every vacation you posted with #selfmade. I turned to Daniel. "Son, if silence were a job, you'd be a CEO." His jaw worked. Nothing came out. "Margaret," Vanessa said lightly, the syllables skating on condescension. "You're overreacting. It was a joke." Jokes land better when they're not paid for in installments. I said, "Here's what isn't a joke. Tomorrow your cards won't swipe. The bank transfers will stop. And an officer from the sheriff's department will be very punctual in 30 days. My chair scraped back with the soft authority of a signature drying. I picked up my clutch, nodded to the room as if we'd all just concluded a civilized auction, and headed for the door. Each step across their hardwood sounded like a declaration of independence, mine. Behind me, glass clinked, a fork clattered. Someone whispered, "Can she do that?" The answer, legally and spiritually, was yes. At the foyer I paused beneath the family portrait they'd commissioned with my money, a beach sunset where I'd been cropped to the edge like a stranger who wandered into their perfect life. I looked at my sliver of a smile and thought, never again. Vanessa's voice rose, thin with panic. "Margaret, you can't just, what about the kids?" I turned, softening only where it mattered. "Sophia and Jacob will always have their grandmother. What they won't have is a grandmother they're taught to sneer at while she pays their Wi-Fi." Daniel finally found his voice. "We can talk about this." We could have, for 15 years, I said. You preferred direct deposit. I opened the door. Night air met me like an old friend. My driver, paid for by me. Imagine that, stepped forward. Before I crossed the threshold, I looked back one last time. Oh, and Vanessa? Next time you make a toast, pick sparkling water. You'll need a clear head. The door clicked behind me. Small sound, big life. At 6 a.m., I would make 3 calls that would flip their world: the bank, my lawyer, and, most dangerously, the grandchildren. Page 2 starts with the first call and the first account to die. The end of a dynasty doesn't start with gunfire, it starts with a polite call to customer service. The next morning, I woke before dawn. Years of running a construction company had trained me that the world doesn't wait for your hangover. I showered, twisted my gray hair into a bun that could double as a gavel, and buttoned into my pearl gray suit. If I was going to dismantle 15 years of financial codependency, I might as well look like a boardroom executioner. At exactly 6:01 a.m., I picked up the phone. Good morning, Bank of America, a cheerful woman sang on the line. How may I assist you? Yes, I said with measured calm. This is Margaret Cole. I need to cancel several automatic transfers immediately. Her typing clicked in the background. Certainly, Ms. Cole. Can you confirm the transactions you'd like to cancel? I smiled, though no one could see it. Every single one. I listed them like headstones in a cemetery. $2,500 monthly to Daniel and Vanessa's household expenses. $800 for Vanessa's SUV payment. $500 for the children's ballet, soccer, piano, and whatever else they never practiced. $300 for the country club membership where Vanessa bragged about her house. One by one, the cheerful woman's voice dimmed. Are you sure you'd like to proceed with all these cancellations, Ms. Cole? Ma'am, I said, if I were any surer, I'd be engraved in granite. The sound of her keystrokes was music. Chopin couldn't have written a sweeter symphony. And the credit cards? She asked. Cancel them, I said. All additional cards attached to my accounts under Daniel Cole and Vanessa Cole. Blocked, shredded, deleted, whatever your system calls it. Imagine they never existed. A pause. More typing. Done. When I hung up, my apartment was silent but somehow brighter. Like someone had lifted 15 years of smog from my lungs. 7:15 a.m. My second call, Frank Miller. My attorney of 15 years. A man who could file an eviction while buttering his toast. Margaret, he said, his voice low, professional. I saw your note last night. Are you still certain? Frank, I replied. Certainty is when you've paid for a Disney trip and your daughter-in-law still tells the waiter you're not family. Draft the papers. He exhaled like a priest who'd been waiting for the sinner to finally confess. You'll need to give them 30 days notice. But since they've never paid rent or utilities, we have leverage. Perfect, I said. I'm not tossing children into the street. I'm tossing freeloaders into the workforce. 8:02 a.m. The third call, and perhaps the most dangerous, not to the children, but about them. I rang the private school where Sophia and Jacob spent their days being polished into tiny aristocrats. Cole family account. The secretary chirped. How can I help? Consider the account unpaid, I said. Starting today, my grandchildren will finish the semester. After that, enrollment ends unless their parents make arrangements. There was a shocked pause. Then polite throat clearing. Understood, Ms. Cole. We'll notify them. I hung up, leaned back in my chair, and let the silence wash over me. Vanessa thought she had humiliated me with a toast. What she didn't realize was that I was about to flip the entire table. By 10 a.m., their phones would explode, rejected cards, bounced payments, canceled memberships, and my son's voice, when it finally came through, was not the roar of a man, it was the whimper of a child who'd lost his allowance. When the money dies, silence never follows, it's replaced by screaming phone calls. By 10 o'clock, my phone vibrated so violently on the glass table I thought it might shatter. First Daniel, then Vanessa, then Daniel again. 15 missed calls in less than half an hour. Each one stacked like unpaid bills. I let them pile up while I sipped my coffee. A French roast so strong it could file lawsuits on its own. Finally, on the 16th call, I answered. Mom. Daniel's voice cracked. Frantic. High-pitched. What's going on? Vanessa's card was declined at the supermarket. She was humiliated in front of everyone. Good morning, Daniel, I said, stirring sugar into my coffee with surgical precision. I hope you're enjoying the house I bought. This is serious, he shouted. The bank says all our accounts are blocked. Mom, what the hell did you do? I took a slow sip. Correction, I didn't block your accounts. I blocked mine, you just had access. There was a pause on his end, as if he was trying to solve an algebra problem with crayons. But Mom, we've lived here 15 years. It's our home. No, son, I said evenly, it's my home, a house in my name. Paid with my money, maintained with my credit. You have 30 days to find another. Silence, then the ragged sound of his breathing. Mom, please. Vanessa didn't mean what she said last night. She was drunk. She was stressed. You know how she gets. Daniel, I said softly, if she'd been holding a knife instead of a wine glass, would you say she didn't mean to stab me? He sputtered. It was just words. Words you sat and swallowed while your wife gutted me in front of strangers. You didn't flinch. You didn't defend me. You let her turn me into a punchline. I heard him whisper something, maybe to Vanessa in the background. Her shrill voice broke through the line. Margaret, you can't do this. The kids, think of the kids. Oh, Vanessa, I said, smiling at the absurdity. For 15 years, I've been thinking of the kids. I paid for their school, their food, their vacations. I even paid for the nannies so you could sip martinis in peace. Now it's time you thought of them, by getting a job. Her gasp was so dramatic I almost clapped. Daniel came back on, voice cracking. Mom, you don't understand. If you do this, we'll lose everything. No, son, I corrected. You'll finally gain something. Responsibility. Before he could reply, I ended the call. The silence afterward was delicious. Like biting into an apple so crisp it echoes in your teeth. I leaned back, folded my hands, and whispered to myself, Phase 1. Complete. But freedom doesn't end with a phone call, it begins with lunch. And that afternoon, for the first time in 15 years, I dined alone, in peace, until a familiar young waiter asked the one question that cracked me open. Liberation tastes like quiche and regret, and both go down smoother with wine. At 2 in the afternoon, I did something so ordinary it felt radical. I went to lunch, alone. No emergency diaper runs, no last-minute soccer cleats. No, Grandma, can you pick up the tab? Just me, a book, and a reservation at Le Petit Bleu, the little French cafe downtown where the tables were always dressed sharper than Vanessa's excuses. The hostess blinked when I said, Table for one. She almost asked if the rest of my party was coming, then thought better of it when she caught my expression, the kind of expression that says my party left 15 years ago. And I'm not chasing them. They sat me by the window. Sunlight spilled across the white tablecloth, and I opened a novel I'd been meaning to read since 2011. The silence was intoxicating. No kids bickering about Wi-Fi passwords. No son snoring in the middle of the day. No daughter-in-law dropping hints about, just a little something from Chanel. The waiter approached. Young, polite, the same one who'd served me years ago when I used to come here with my late husband. His name tag read Alex. Mrs. Cole, he said warmly, haven't seen you in ages. How have you been? I surprised myself by smiling. A real one. I'm rediscovering myself. Alex, turns out I'm excellent company. He grinned. That's the best kind of discovery. I ordered a quiche Lorraine, a glass of Sauvignon Blanc, and permission to breathe like a woman not chained to her family's overdraft. When the food came, I ate slowly, savoring each bite. The pastry was buttery, the eggs perfectly set, freedom had flavor, and it wasn't chocolate cake at a birthday party that wasn't really mine. Halfway through my meal, my phone buzzed again. Vanessa, then Daniel, then Vanessa again. I flipped the phone face down on the table. For once, their emergencies weren't on my menu. Instead, I let myself remember all the times I'd cancelled my own plans for them, the Mediterranean cruise I abandoned because Vanessa swore Jacob needed, uncovered, surgery that insurance later revealed would have been free, the apartment redecoration I postponed after Daniel pitched an investment opportunity that ate $50 in 6 months, the countless nights I'd swallowed loneliness because they needed me to babysit or bail them out. I put my fork down, staring at the quiche as if it were confessing something. My life had been on pause for 15 years. 15 years of playing banker, babysitter, background character, and all it took to press play again was one cancelled transfer. Alex returned to refill my glass. He tilted his head, studying me. "If you don't mind me saying, Mrs. Cole, you look lighter, happier." I raised my glass. "That's because I finally fired 2 employees who thought they were family." He laughed, not realizing how little of it was a joke. But peace is never free. That evening, my phone buzzed with a message, not from Daniel or Vanessa, but from my granddaughter Sophia, and her words cut deeper than any toast ever could. "It's one thing to be insulted by your daughter-in-law, it's another to be questioned by a 14-year-old who doesn't know the truth." By the time I returned home that evening, the city was lighting up, one window at a time. I slipped off my heels, poured myself a glass of Chardonnay, and let the quiet embrace me. My phone buzzed again, but this time it wasn't Daniel or Vanessa. The caller ID read, "Unknown number." I almost ignored it, until the message preview flashed across the screen. "Grandma, it's Sophia. Mom borrowed the neighbor's phone. Is it true you don't love us anymore? Why is Dad crying?" My hand froze on the stem of the wineglass. Sophia, my sweet granddaughter with my green eyes and her mother's curls. 14 years old, old enough to notice when the ground shifted beneath her feet, but too young to understand why. I sat down, heart heavy, and typed back carefully. "My love, of course I love you. I always will, but sometimes adults have to make hard decisions to teach important lessons." There was a pause, then the bubbles of her reply. "Mom says you're very angry. She says we can't come see you." I smiled sadly. The manipulation had started already. "Your mom is wrong. My door is always open to you and Jacob. Tell your dad I want to see you tomorrow at 4 p.m. just you two. We'll talk. You'll understand." Her response was instant. "Okay, we'll come, I promise." I set the phone down, exhaling a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. The children didn't deserve to be pawns in their parents' game. They deserved the truth, delivered gently but firmly, before they grew into adults who thought money fell from the sky, or worse, from me. That night, as I ate grilled salmon with asparagus and played Vivaldi softly in the background, I thought of Robert, my late husband, telling me once in our garden, "Love without limits isn't love. Margaret, it's complicity." Back then, I thought he was being harsh. Now, with Sophia's message still glowing on my phone, I finally understood. The next afternoon, Sophia and Jacob would walk into my apartment with wide eyes and heavier questions. And I would finally tell them the truth their parents never dared to say out loud. Children ask simple questions, but their innocence can slice through 15 years of lies. At 4 o'clock sharp the next afternoon, my doorbell rang. I opened it to see Sophia and Jacob, their school backpacks slung over their shoulders like shields. Daniel hovered behind them, looking as though he hadn't slept in days. His shirt was wrinkled, his eyes bloodshot. "Mom," he started, but I raised my hand. "This conversation is with my grandchildren. You can wait in the lobby." "Daniel." Sophia looked at him, then at me, and with a surprising maturity, placed a hand on her father's arm. "It's okay, Dad. We need to talk to Grandma." He hesitated, then shuffled toward the elevator like a man walking to his own sentencing. Inside, I had set out a plate of chocolate chip cookies and 2 mugs of hot cocoa. The children sat on the couch, but their faces weren't the carefree ones I usually saw at Christmas. Sophia's eyes brimmed with questions. Jacob's fingers twisted the hem of his hoodie. "Grandma," Sophia began, her voice shaky, "is it true you're taking away our house? Mom says you don't want us anymore." I took a deep breath. This was the moment, the crack in the foundation where truth could either be poured in or plastered over. I chose truth. My loves, I said gently, do you know who pays for your house? For your school, your clothes, your vacations? Jacob shrugged. Mom and Dad? I shook my head. No, for 15 years, I have paid for everything. The mortgage, the bills, even the food in your refrigerator. Your parents haven't worked. They've lived on my money. Sophia's mouth fell open, but Dad says he has a business. A business that has never made enough to buy a gallon of milk. I replied softly, your mom has a degree, speaks 3 languages, but she chose not to work. They both decided it was easier to let me carry the weight. Jacob frowned. So, we're poor? You are not poor, I said firmly, but your parents have been irresponsible. And I can't keep pretending money falls from the sky. Because if I do, you'll grow up believing that's normal. And it isn't. The children exchanged glances, their young minds wrestling with truths that should never have been hidden from them. Grandma, Sophia whispered, then why did Mom always say we should thank her for the vacations? She said she saved for months. My heart cracked. Because, sweetheart, sometimes adults tell lies to protect their pride. But the truth is, it was me, Disney, Cancun, private school, every penny came from my checkbook. Jacob stared at me, eyes wide. So, we've been living off you all along? Yes, and that ends now, because you deserve something better than lies. You deserve to learn respect, gratitude, and the value of hard work. The cocoa steamed between us as silence settled. It wasn't the silence of confusion, it was the silence of realization. And then Sophia asked the one question that nearly broke me, Grandma. Did we ever make you feel like just an ATM? There are questions you can laugh off, and then there are questions that drill straight into your bones. Sophia's voice trembled as she spoke. Grandma, did we ever make you feel like just an ATM? The room went still. Even the ticking clock on the wall seemed to pause, waiting for my answer. I leaned forward, taking her hand in mine. Sweetheart, you and Jacob are children. It was never your responsibility to understand money. But yes, sometimes, when you'd run to me only when you wanted things, never just to say hello, it felt that way. Jacob's face flushed red, like when I asked you for that new video game last Christmas? I smiled sadly. Exactly. You didn't mean harm, Jacob. You were just repeating what you saw at home. But imagine how it feels when, instead of hugs or questions about my day, all I hear is, Grandma, can you buy this? Sophia looked down at her cocoa. Her lips pressed tight. That must have been awful. Like when my friends only talk to me when they forget their lunch money. I hate it when they do that. I nodded. Multiply that by 15 years. And you'll understand why I finally said enough. Jacob's eyes widened. 15 years? That's longer than I've been alive. Yes, I said, since before either of you were born. I've been paying for everything. Hoping it would build love. But love that must be bought isn't love, it's rent. The children exchanged a look. One of those wordless sibling glances that says this changes everything. Sophia spoke again, her voice steadier now. Grandma, I think we owe you an apology too. We never said thank you. We just assumed it was normal. Tears stung my eyes, but I smiled through them. You don't owe me anything. Sophia, what matters is what you learn now. Gratitude, respect, effort, those are worth more than anything I could buy. Jacob sat up straighter, determination flickering in his 11-year-old eyes. Then I want to learn. I can mow lawns, or help at your office, or wash cars. I chuckled softly. You're too young for construction sites, Jacob, but you can start small, manage your allowance, help with chores, save for things you want. That's how you'll learn. Sophia nodded, resolve setting in, and I can babysit, or help at the bookstore near school. I don't want to live off lies anymore. Their words hit me harder than Vanessa's toast, harder than Daniel's silence, because in that moment, I realized the cycle could be broken. The poison didn't have to flow into the next generation. But the hardest truths hadn't been spoken yet. Sophia leaned closer, lowered her voice, and revealed something her mother had been saying behind my back for years. Sometimes betrayal doesn't come from enemies, it drips from the mouths of those who smile at your dinner table. Sophia hesitated, biting her lip. Her eyes darted to Jacob, who was busy dunking a cookie in his cocoa. Then back to me. Grandma, can I tell you something? But you have to promise not to be mad. I leaned closer. You can tell me anything. She swallowed hard. Mom says, you're controlling. That you use money to manipulate us. That you like us depending on you because you don't have a life of your own. The words hit like bricks. Hearing them from Vanessa would have been one thing, but hearing them echoed in my granddaughter's trembling voice nearly cracked me in half. I forced a breath through my lungs, steadying myself. And how does that make you feel, Sophia? She looked down, confused. Because you've always been there for us. You pay for everything. You come to my recitals. You never miss Jacob's soccer games. I don't understand how someone who does all that could be controlling. Jacob finally looked up, his cheeks full of cookie crumbs. Yeah, if you were controlling, wouldn't you be bossing us around all the time? Instead, you just pay for stuff. I laughed softly, though my chest ached. Your mother says those things because it's easier to twist generosity into control than to admit she's been irresponsible. It's easier to paint me as the villain than face the truth. She and your father chose the easy way for 15 years. Sophia's eyes shimmered. So, she was lying about you? She wasn't lying, sweetheart. She was just protecting her pride. When someone depends on another person for too long, they start to resent it. Instead of saying thank you, they convince themselves you're doing it for selfish reasons. Jacob frowned. That's dumb. If I were you, I'd have stopped paying ages ago. Out of the mouths of babes, I said, smiling sadly. I reached across the table, holding both their hands. Listen carefully. What I'm doing now, it isn't to punish you. It's to teach you something your parents forgot to teach, that respect is not optional. And true love can't be bought. The two of them nodded slowly, their faces older than their years. In that moment, I saw a flicker of hope. Maybe, just maybe, they wouldn't inherit the entitlement that had poisoned their parents. But hope has a price. And the very next day, that price arrived in the form of a late-night phone call from Vanessa, begging for forgiveness in a voice I barely recognized. Apologies mean little when they arrive only after the credit cards stop working. The call came close to midnight. My phone buzzed against the nightstand, its glow slicing through the dark. I considered letting it ring out until I saw the caller ID, private number. Curiosity 1. Hello? A pause, then a shaky voice I knew too well. Margaret, it's me, Vanessa. I'm calling from the neighbor's phone. You cut ours off. I sat up, my back straight against the headboard. Ah, Vanessa Cole, what a surprise. How can I help you? Or wait, are we pretending this is a joke too? She inhaled sharply. Please, don't be cruel. I need to explain. I was drunk at dinner. I didn't mean what I said. I almost laughed. You meant every word, Vanessa. Alcohol doesn't create truth, it just removes the filter. You humiliated me in front of strangers because you've been thinking that way for years. Her breathing was ragged. Rosalia, Margaret, please, think about the children. They're terrified. Daniel hasn't stopped crying. Sophia and Jacob don't understand what's happening. Oh, they understand, I said coldly. More than you think. I explained it to them myself yesterday. They know the truth. You've lived 15 years on my dime. And you've taught them lies to cover it up. Silence, then a choked sob. Margaret, I'll change. I swear. I'll get a job. Daniel will work. Just give us one more chance. One more chance? My voice was steel. You had 15 years of chances. 15 years of private schools. Luxury cars. European vacations, all courtesy of me. Tell me, Vanessa, how many times did you invite me to dinner that you paid for? How many times did you call just to ask how I was, not how my checkbook was? More silence. Then, in the smallest voice I'd ever heard from her, none. Exactly, I said, and that's why this conversation isn't about chances. It's about consequences. Her tone sharpened, desperation cracking into anger. This is cruelty, Margaret. You're punishing your own family for one stupid mistake. I let the bitterness curl into my laugh. No, Vanessa, I'm finally refusing to be punished. For 15 years, I punished myself every time I said yes when I wanted to say no. That ends now. The sobbing returned, then the pleading. Please, just think about the kids. They don't deserve this. You're right, I said softly. They don't, which is why they'll always have me. But you'll have to meet me as an equal, or not at all. I hung up before she could reply. For a moment, the silence felt heavy, then it felt like freedom. The next morning, my lawyer called with news darker than Vanessa's late-night sobs, news that proved their betrayal went far beyond unpaid bills. Betrayal is bad enough when it's emotional, worse when it's written in your credit report. At 8:30 the next morning, my phone rang again. This time it wasn't Daniel's hysteria or Vanessa's tears. It was Frank Miller, my lawyer, with a voice as calm as a surgeon's scalpel. Margaret, he began, I've finished reviewing the documents you asked me to check. I set down my coffee. And? You may want to sit. I've been sitting for 15 years. Frank, tell me. He cleared his throat. In addition to the credit cards and accounts you authorized, Vanessa opened 3 department store cards, Nordstrom, Macy's, Saks Fifth Avenue, all of them using your financial information as backing. I gripped the arm of my chair. Excuse me? She didn't forge your signature exactly. Frank explained. She listed you as guarantor, using your social security number and credit history to qualify. The balances total about $50,000. My breath caught. $50,000. Yes, his tone remained professional, though I heard the edge beneath it. Technically, it's fraud, and if you chose to press charges. I cut him off with a bitter laugh. My daughter-in-law commits fraud with my identity, and I'm the one who feels guilty for being angry. That's how twisted this has become. Frank hesitated. Do you want to pursue criminal charges? I leaned back, staring at the ceiling. For a fleeting second, I imagined Vanessa in handcuffs, mascara running, designer heels clacking against a courthouse floor. But then I thought of Sophia and Jacob. Their wide eyes, their confusion. No, I said finally. Not yet. Cancel the cards, dispute the debts, and dig deeper. If there's more, I want to know. Understood, he replied. I'll begin immediately. When I hung up, I sat in stunned silence. For years I had thought the humiliation was limited to dinners, backhanded comments, and constant begging. But this was worse. This was identity theft from inside my own family. I walked to the window, looking out over the city. My reflection stared back, older. Yes, but unbroken, if anything, sharper. Financial abuse, I whispered, remembering the words my old friend Linda had once said. And for the first time, I understood them. I hadn't just been generous. I had been groomed, trained to believe that saying no made me cruel. Not anymore. That afternoon, I picked up the phone and called someone I hadn't spoken to in a decade, an old friend who would name the abuse for what it truly was. Sometimes it takes a friend from your past to remind you who you used to be. By mid-afternoon, the weight of Frank's revelation still pressed on my chest. Fraud. $50,000. My own daughter-in-law had turned my name into her personal credit card. I poured myself another coffee. Stronger this time, then did something I hadn't done in over a decade, scrolled through my old contacts. My thumb paused over a name, Linda Harris. We'd been inseparable in college, 2 ambitious young women with grand plans to conquer the world. She became an art curator in Miami, I built a construction company in New York. Over the years, between raising Daniel and financing Vanessa's endless wish list, I'd let our friendship crumble like neglected concrete. I pressed call. The line rang twice before a warm, familiar voice answered. Hello? Linda, I said, my throat tightening. It's Margaret. There was a beat of silence. Then an incredulous laugh. My God, Margaret Cole? I thought you'd fallen off the planet. In a way, I said, I fell into my family. We talked for an hour, me spilling 15 years of quiet misery. Her listening with the patience of someone who'd waited too long to hear the truth. I told her everything, the toast, the eviction notice, the cancelled transfers, the fraud. When I finally stopped, Linda exhaled deeply. Margaret, what you've described isn't generosity. It's financial abuse. The words landed like thunder. Financial abuse? I repeated. Yes, she said firmly. When people manipulate you emotionally to control your resources. When they commit fraud in your name. When they twist your kindness into obligation, that isn't family love. That's abuse. I leaned back in my chair. Stunned. Abuse. I'd called it duty, sacrifice, generosity, but she was right. It was abuse, painted in Hallmark colors but just as destructive. And do you know what's worse? Linda continued. Victims of financial abuse always feel guilty for setting boundaries. They're made to believe they're cruel for saying no. Sound familiar? Tears pricked my eyes. Exactly how I've felt all week. Margaret, she said gently, you've been the victim, not the villain. For the first time in years, I felt seen. That night, with Linda's words echoing in my ears, I made a decision. I would stop hiding. And I would start living for myself. Not for their debts. It's amazing how light the world feels once you decide you're done carrying everyone else's weight. That night, after hanging up with Linda, I sat in my apartment staring out at the skyline. The city sparkled like a million opportunities I had once dreamed of but had long buried under babysitting schedules, bill payments, and Vanessa's invented emergencies. For years, I told myself it was love. That paying for everything was how I stayed needed. But Linda's words kept echoing, financial abuse. I whispered it out loud, testing it on my tongue. Abuse. Not sacrifice, not duty, abuse. It was as if naming it cracked the chains I hadn't even realized were there. For the first time in 15 years, I picked up my diary, the one Robert had given me for my 50th birthday. Leather-bound, still half empty, I wrote a single sentence across the fresh page. Today I stopped being their wallet. Today I started being Margaret again. The next morning, I called my bank to confirm, all transfers cancelled. All cards shut down, passwords changed, my accounts were mine again. Then I did something radical. I booked a ticket to Italy. Florence, to be exact, the city Robert and I always promised we'd see together but never did. The travel agent asked, will anyone be joining you? Yes, I said with a smile. Me. When I hung up, I laughed, a full, belly-deep laugh I hadn't heard from myself in years. It startled me, then healed me. I made another call, this time to Linda. Pack your nicest dress, I told her. You and I are going to an art exhibit in Florence next month. Her delighted squeal nearly burst my eardrum. The Margaret the first remember is back. Yes, I said, glancing at the eviction papers still on my counter. And this time, she's not financing anyone's laziness. That night, I slept like a woman who had just signed her own emancipation papers. No phone under the pillow. No dread of 3 a.m. emergencies. No calculations of how long my savings would last if Daniel never worked again. For the first time in 15 years, my dreams belonged to me. But freedom always rattles the cages of those who lose their grip, and the very next morning, Daniel was waiting in the lobby with desperation in his eyes. A grown man begging like a child is sad enough, until you realize it's your son. The following morning, I stepped out of the elevator in my building's marble lobby, my handbag on my arm, my mind already on cappuccinos and to-do lists. And there he was. Daniel. My only son, my miracle baby, sitting slumped in a leather chair like a teenager waiting outside the principal's office. His head was bowed, his hands clenched between his knees. When he saw me, he shot up so fast the chair squeaked across the floor. Mom, he said breathlessly, please, we have to talk. I kept walking toward the front door. Good morning, Daniel. The weather's nice, isn't it? He scrambled to follow. Mom, please, I'm begging you, don't do this. We'll fix it. I'll fix it. Just give us more time. I turned sharply, heels clicking against the marble. 15 years isn't enough time? His mouth opened, closed. He looked like a fish gasping on dry land. Do you know what I realized yesterday? I continued, my voice calm, almost conversational. When Vanessa insulted me at that dinner, you said nothing, nothing. You didn't defend me. You didn't even flinch. Do you know how loud your silence was? Mom, he whispered. I didn't know what to say. You've never known what to say. I cut in. Not when she mocked me for being single. Not when she hinted I was buying affection. Not when she cropped me out of the family photos I paid for. You've been silent for 15 years. Daniel. And silence, I said, leaning closer, is complicity. His eyes filled with tears. Mom, please, I can't lose everything. The kids, Vanessa, they'll fall apart. I straightened, then let them learn how to stand. For a long moment, he just stood there, shoulders slumped, 39 years old and looking younger than Jacob. Finally, he whispered, "What do you want from me?" The question stunned me. What did I want? Not money, not apologies rehearsed in Vanessa's voice. Just one thing. Respect, I said simply. That's all I ever wanted. The elevator dinged behind me, and I walked away, leaving him standing in the lobby like a boy who had just realized the allowance was gone. That afternoon, as if fate wanted to twist the knife, Sophia and Jacob came back, with questions sharper than their father's pleas. Children have a way of asking the questions adults are too cowardly to face. That afternoon, right on time, the doorbell rang. When I opened it, Sophia and Jacob stood there again, no backpacks this time. Just solemn eyes that seemed far too old for their years. "Grandma," Sophia said softly, "can we talk again?" I welcomed them inside, setting out more cookies and cocoa. Though the air between us felt heavier, they sat on the couch, their hands folded, as if preparing for a courtroom cross-examination. Jacob spoke first. "Dad's really upset. He said you're being unfair. That you're trying to break up the family." I sat across from them, folding my hands. "Do you feel like I'm breaking up the family?" Jacob hesitated, then shook his head. "No, but why didn't you stop Dad and Mom before? If you were paying for everything, why didn't you say no a long time ago?" The question pierced deeper than any accusation, out of the mouths of children. "Because," I admitted, "I thought that was love. I thought if I gave enough, they'd appreciate me. I thought money could buy peace." Sophia tilted her head. "Did it?" I let out a bitter laugh. "No, sweetheart. It bought silence, fake smiles, and 15 years of exhaustion." She frowned. "Then, why did Dad let Mom be so mean to you? Why didn't he protect you?" That one I couldn't soften. "Because he never learned how. Your grandfather and I gave him too much. Too soon. We thought we were giving him love. We were really giving him weakness." Sophia's green eyes, so much like mine, glimmered with unshed tears. "Grandma, I don't want to be weak." I leaned forward, taking her hands. "Then you won't be. You'll learn to work, to respect, to stand on your own feet. That's why I'm doing this. For you, for Jacob, so you'll grow strong where your parents crumbled." Jacob's voice was small. "Will we still get to see you, even if Dad and Mom don't want us to?" I pulled them both into a hug. "Always. My door will never close to you. Not now, not ever." For the first time that week, I felt true hope, because maybe the cycle would finally end with them. But hope has a way of drawing fire. That night, Vanessa called again, and this time, her words weren't begging, they were threatening. Begging is one thing, threats are another, and Vanessa had finally decided to bare her teeth. The phone rang just after 9 that night. I almost didn't answer, but the persistence of the call told me exactly who it was. Sure enough, when I lifted the receiver, her voice slithered through the line. "Margaret." "Vanessa," I said evenly, swirling the wine in my glass. "Back again so soon? Shouldn't you be updating your resume?" Her hiss of breath was sharp enough to cut glass. "You think this is funny? You've humiliated us. Do you have any idea what people are saying? My friends saw the cards get declined. Do you know what that does to my reputation?" I almost laughed. "Your reputation? Vanessa, you don't have a reputation. You have a tab, and it's closed." Her voice dropped low, venomous. "You can't do this. Daniel is your son. Those children are your grandchildren. If you throw us out, you'll never see them again. I'll make sure of it." For a moment, the air in my apartment went cold. The threat wasn't subtle, it was a blade pressed to my heart. But then I straightened, setting down my glass with deliberate calm. "Vanessa," I said, "you forget something. Those children are not pawns in your game. You can bar me from your house. But you can't erase me from their hearts. They've already come to me. They already know the truth. And the more you try to poison them against me, the more they'll see who you really are." She faltered, "Just for a second, you think you can turn them against me?" "I don't have to," I replied. "You're doing a spectacular job of that yourself." There was a long silence, broken only by her shaky breathing. Finally, she spat out, "You'll regret this." "No," I said, my voice steady as steel. "What I regret is waiting 15 years to do it." I hung up before she could reply, placing the receiver gently back in its cradle. For the first time, Vanessa had shown her true face, not the smiling mask at dinner parties. Not the fake tears over emergencies, but the raw entitlement underneath. And if she thought threats would scare me back into submission, she had gravely miscalculated. The very next morning, my lawyer confirmed just how deep Vanessa's betrayal ran, and this time, it wasn't just about money. It was about my very identity. Money can be replaced, your identity cannot. And Vanessa had crossed that line, too. At 8:15 the next morning, my phone rang with Frank Miller's number. I braced myself. Lawyers never call early unless there's blood in the water. "Margaret," he said, his voice clipped, "I've dug deeper, as you requested, and I'm afraid it's worse than we thought." My stomach tightened. Worse than 50,000 in department store debt? Yes. Vanessa didn't stop there. She's been using your social security number for years. Utility bills, phone contracts, even medical paperwork. She's built a shadow life on your identity. If I hadn't caught it, you could have been liable for thousands more or worse. Flagged for fraud yourself. For a long second, I couldn't breathe. My own daughter-in-law hadn't just leeched off me, she'd stolen me. "What are my options?" I asked, forcing my voice steady. "Legally, you could press criminal charges. It's textbook identity theft, but since she's family," he let the sentence trail off. I walked to the window, looking out at the city. The skyline was the same, but suddenly it felt unfamiliar, like Vanessa's fraud had reached its hands into the concrete itself. "Frank," I said finally, "I don't care if she's family. Family doesn't gut you from the inside out. File the disputes, lock down every account, and prepare a report. I want every instance documented. Every fake contract, every forged signature. I want a record, even if I don't press charges today." There was approval in his silence. "Consider it done." I hung up, my hand trembling, not from fear, but from fury. Vanessa hadn't just disrespected me at a dinner table. She had treated my name, my identity, as her personal currency. And Daniel? Either he knew and stayed silent, or he was too weak to see the prison his wife was building around us all. Either way, I was done playing warden. I pulled out my diary again, writing in bold letters. They didn't just steal my money. They tried to steal my life. And today, I take it back. That afternoon, I called Vanessa myself, not to argue, not to cry, but to deliver a message she couldn't mistake for generosity. There's a difference between a warning and a declaration, and I was done warning. I dialed Vanessa directly. No voicemail dodge, no neighbor's borrowed phone. This time, she picked up on the first ring. Well, she said, her voice brittle. "The Queen finally calls her peasants." "Not peasants, Vanessa," I said calmly. "Parasites. And that stops today." There was a sharp inhale. "Excuse me?" "I know about the credit cards," I continued, my voice flat. "Nordstrom, Macy's, Saks, $50,000. I also know about the utilities, the contracts, the medical paperwork, all opened under my social security number. That isn't just greed, that's fraud." The silence on the other end was deafening. Finally, she stammered, I don't know what you're talking about." "Oh, but you do," I said, my tone like steel. "And here's what's going to happen. I'm not pressing charges yet, but everything in your name tied to mine will be shut down today. Every contract, every card, every fake signature. If you try to open another account under my identity, I'll have you in court faster than you can say, Chanel." Her voice cracked, but the defiance was still there. "You wouldn't dare. You'd destroy your own son in the process." "No, Vanessa," I said, leaning against my desk, letting the words land like bricks. You've already done that. You've turned Daniel into a man-child who thinks responsibility is negotiable. You've raised my grandchildren to believe money is magic. You've nearly destroyed this family. The only thing I'm destroying is your illusion of control." I could hear her breathing, fast, shallow, panicked. "Vanessa, let me make this crystal clear," I said. "You have 25 days left in my house. 25 days to pack, to find work, to face reality. If you're not out by then, the sheriff will handle your exit. And if you so much as touch my name again, I will not hesitate to let the law do what it does best." "You're cruel," she whispered, bitter, heartless. "No," I said softly, "I'm free." And with that, I hung up. For the first time, I felt no guilt, no hesitation, only clarity. That night, as I poured myself a quiet glass of wine, Sophia's number flashed across my phone again, this time with a message that nearly broke me in half. "Sometimes the sharpest blade isn't wielded by enemies, it's slipped into your heart by someone you love." My phone buzzed against the counter, the screen lighting up with a number I now recognized instantly, Sophia. My chest tightened. Children's words cut deeper than lawyers or lawsuits. The message read, "Grandma, Mom says you're cruel. She says you don't love us anymore. Jacob's crying. Please tell me she's wrong." I sank onto the couch, the glass of wine untouched beside me. My green-eyed granddaughter, my mirror, caught in her mother's web. Vanessa's poison dripping into her veins the same way it had poisoned Daniel years ago. My fingers hovered over the screen before I typed back. "Sophia, listen to me carefully. I love you and Jacob more than anything in the world. That will never change. But love doesn't mean paying for lies. Love means teaching you the truth, even when it hurts." 3 dots appeared, then vanished, then reappeared. Finally, her reply came. "Dad's been crying too. He says you've abandoned him. Did you?" The words sliced me open. Abandoned. That was the story Daniel and Vanessa had chosen to tell their children. That I was the villain. I pressed my palms against my knees, forcing myself to breathe. Then I typed, "I didn't abandon anyone, Sophia. For 15 years, I supported your family when I shouldn't have. That wasn't love, it was enabling. Your father is crying because he finally has to grow up. And sometimes growing up hurts." There was no reply for a long time. Just the 3 dots flashing and disappearing like a heartbeat. Finally, her message came. "Can Jacob and I still come see you this weekend?" Tears blurred my vision as I answered, "Always. My door is open, my arms are open, but my wallet is closed. And one day, you'll understand why that's the best gift I could ever give you." I set the phone down, exhaling shakily. For the first time, I realized Vanessa's threats didn't scare me anymore, because the bond between me and my grandchildren was stronger than her lies. But just when I thought the storm was calming, Daniel himself showed up at my apartment door, eyes red, fists clenched, demanding what he thought was still owed to him. A knock at your door can be ordinary, until it comes with the sound of your past demanding payment. It was just after 10 at night when the pounding started. Not a polite knock, but fists slamming against my apartment door hard enough to rattle the frame. "Mom, open up." "Daniel." I set my wineglass down slowly, rose from the couch, and walked to the door. Through the peephole I saw him, eyes red, shirt wrinkled, fists still hammering as though volume could change reality. "Mom, I know you're in there." His voice cracked, part rage, part desperation. "You can't just do this. You can't just throw us out like garbage." I opened the door a few inches, keeping the chain locked. "Daniel, lower your voice. The whole building can hear you." "I don't care." His face was flushed, his eyes wild. "You've ruined my life. You've ruined our lives. You cut us off like we're strangers." "Not strangers," I said coolly. "Parasites." And I finally stopped being the host. He flinched as though I'd slapped him. "How can you talk to your own son like that? After everything." I cut him off. "After everything I gave you. After every bill, every car, every so-called emergency. 15 years of sacrifice. Daniel. And when Vanessa humiliated me, what did you do? You looked at your plate." He slammed his hand against the doorframe. I didn't know what to do. She gets carried away sometimes. But she didn't mean it. She meant every word, I said, and worse than that, you let her speak them. His voice dropped to a hoarse whisper. Mom, please, the kids, think about the kids. My heart ached, but I didn't falter. I am thinking about them. That's why I'm doing this. They deserve to see what real responsibility looks like. Not two adults leeching off a 70-year-old woman. His lips trembled, his anger collapsing into something weaker. We'll lose everything. No, I said softly, you'll gain something, dignity, but you'll have to earn it the hard way. I shut the door before he could answer. The chain sliding back into place with a final click. On the other side, I heard him sink against the wall, sobbing like a boy instead of a man. And for once, I didn't reach for my wallet. The next morning, Frank called again, with proof that Daniel wasn't just weak. He was complicit. Weakness is forgivable, complicity is not. At 7:30 the next morning, my phone buzzed. It was Frank again, his tone brisk, businesslike, but I could hear the edge of outrage under his professionalism. Margaret, I've got news, he said, and it isn't pretty. I gripped my coffee mug tighter. Go on. You asked me to look deeper into the fraud. It turns out Daniel wasn't just in the dark. He signed on half of it. Utilities, store cards, even a luxury lease for a car in Vanessa's name. Your son co-signed it all. We pulled the paperwork. His signature is there, clear as day. My breath caught. Not just silence, not just weakness, active betrayal. So, what you're telling me, I said slowly, is that my son has been helping his wife gut me like a fish while smiling across my dinner table. I'm afraid so. Legally, that strengthens your case. But morally, he hesitated. It's devastating. I walked to the window, staring at the skyline while my pulse thundered in my ears. I had always told myself Daniel was blind, manipulated, a victim of Vanessa's charms. But now, he hadn't just watched her dig the knife in, he had helped sharpen it. Frank, I said, my voice low but steady. Document everything, every contract, every forged account. I want a full report. And if he so much as breathes about contesting the eviction, I want you ready to bury him in evidence. There was a pause. Are you sure you're ready for that? This isn't just cutting off money anymore. This could destroy your relationship permanently. I closed my eyes. Destroy it? It had been destroyed the moment my son chose Vanessa's schemes over his mother's dignity. I'm ready, I said. I've been ready for 15 years. I hung up, my coffee growing cold in my hands. For the first time, I let the truth settle like stone in my chest. Daniel wasn't just weak, he was a co-conspirator. And that realization hurt worse than every insult Vanessa had ever thrown. That afternoon, when Sophia and Jacob arrived, I looked into their eyes and made a silent vow. The cycle of betrayal ends with me. When blood betrays you, the only choice left is to save the future before it rots too. At 4 o'clock sharp, the doorbell rang. I opened the door to find Sophia and Jacob standing there, their small faces tight with worry. They weren't carrying backpacks this time, just the weight of questions no child should have to ask. Grandma, Sophia whispered, Dad says you hate us now. That you're trying to break our family apart. My throat tightened, but I knelt down, cupping her chin gently. No, sweetheart, I don't hate you. I could never hate you. I hate what your parents have done, to themselves, to me, and to you. That's what I'm fighting against. Jacob's eyes flickered nervously. But, Dad signed our house papers, right? Mom said it's ours. She said you're lying. I pulled them both inside, shutting the door with a finality that echoed in the hallway. I guided them to the couch and set cookies on the table. But neither reached for them. Children, I began softly. The truth is hard, harder than homework, harder than chores, but you're old enough now to hear it. The house you live in belongs to me. Every bill, every car, every vacation, it was paid with my money, not your parents'. And yesterday, I learned something even worse. They leaned in, eyes wide, bracing themselves. Your father didn't just let your mother take advantage of me. He helped her. He signed papers in my name. Let her use my identity to open accounts and rack up debt. He betrayed me, not just as a son, but as a man. Sophia's lower lip trembled. But, Dad wouldn't. He loves you. I held her gaze, steady but kind. Love isn't what you say, Sophia. Love is what you do. And for years, what your father did was choose silence and signatures instead of respect. Jacob's fists balled in his lap. So he lied too? Yes, I whispered, and lies can poison a family. But that's why I'm stopping it. I don't want you growing up thinking lies and laziness are normal. I want you to know the truth, so you can be stronger than the ones who came before you. For a long moment, neither child spoke. Then Sophia straightened, her eyes glistening but fierce. Then promise us one thing. Grandma, don't let us become like them. My heart cracked and healed in the same instant. I reached out, pulling them both into my arms. I promise, that's why I'm doing this. For you. But while I was vowing to save the future, the past was preparing one last, desperate attack, and it arrived in the form of a letter slid under my door. Words on a page can wound deeper than a knife, especially when they come from your own blood. I found it after Sophia and Jacob left. A single white envelope, slid under my apartment door. My name scrawled across the front in Daniel's uneven handwriting. For a long moment, I just stared at it lying there on the floor like a snake coiled and waiting. Finally, I picked it up, tore the flap, and unfolded the paper inside. Mom. You've gone too far. Vanessa may have made mistakes, but she's still my wife. You're tearing our family apart over your pride. If you go through with this eviction, I swear you'll regret it. I'll make sure you never see Sophia or Jacob again. You think you hold all the power, but you don't. Without us, you'll die alone. Think about that before you sign the final papers. Daniel. The words blurred for a second as my hands trembled, not with grief this time, but with fury, threats, from my own son. I sat down at my desk, staring at the letter. This was no longer just Vanessa's venom. These were Daniel's words, Daniel's ultimatum. He wanted me afraid, he wanted me back in chains. But instead, I reached for my pen. On the back of his letter, I wrote in bold strokes. Daniel. If you think fear will bend me, you've forgotten who raised you. My pride didn't tear this family apart. Your choices did. My door will always be open to Sophia and Jacob. But you and Vanessa? You've chosen your path, and I'll walk mine without regret. Mom. I folded the paper, slid it into an envelope, and left it with the doorman to deliver back to him. No screaming, no tears, just truth. And as I turned away, I realized something. Daniel's threats no longer had power over me. Not his words, not his silence, not his desperation. Because I had finally remembered who I was. The next day, the sheriff's notice was posted on the Maple Street house, and Vanessa's mask shattered in front of the whole neighborhood. Humiliation is a language Vanessa never expected to be fluent in, until the sheriff taught her. The following morning, Frank texted me a simple message. Notice posted. It's official. I knew exactly what that meant. The eviction papers were no longer private documents sealed in an envelope. They were now taped to the front door of the Maple Street house in bold black print for every neighbor to read. By noon, my phone buzzed again, this time from an old friend who lived down the block. Margaret, she said, her voice practically trembling with gossip. I was walking my dog when I saw it, your daughter-in-law standing in the front yard, screaming at the sheriff's deputy like a banshee. She tried to rip the notice down, and he warned her if she touched it again, she'd be fined. Half the neighborhood was watching. She was red as a tomato. I closed my eyes, imagining the scene. Vanessa, always perfectly composed, always dripping with smug superiority, reduced to a shrieking mess in front of her audience. The same audience she'd tried to impress at that dinner party when she toasted my humiliation. Poetic justice, right there on Maple Street. Later that afternoon, I drove past the house myself. I didn't stop, didn't roll down the window, but I saw it, the bold sheet of paper taped squarely to the door, the curtains twitching as nosy neighbors peeked. The Wallace name, my name, dragged not by me, but by their own arrogance. And on the porch, there she was, Vanessa, her arms crossed, her face blotchy with rage, her voice raised at Daniel, who stood pale and quiet beside her. I couldn't hear the words. But I didn't need to. I had heard them all before: blame, denial, venom. But this time, it wasn't me she was lashing out at. It was him. For once, Daniel was the target of the fire he'd allowed to burn me for 15 years. And maybe, just maybe, that was the only way he'd learn what it felt like to be on the receiving end. I drove on, my hands steady on the wheel. The past was behind me. But just when I thought I'd closed the chapter, the bank called with news that turned humiliation into something far darker: criminal fraud. Humiliation stings, but fraud can destroy. And Vanessa hadn't just played with my money. She'd played with fire. At 3 o'clock that afternoon, my cell phone rang. The caller ID showed my bank's fraud department. My stomach dropped. "Mrs. Whitmore?" the woman on the line asked politely. "We need to verify some unusual activity on your accounts." I gripped the phone tighter. "Go on." "There have been 3 new loan applications submitted in the last 48 hours. All in your name. One for a personal loan of $25, one for a store credit line at Bloomingdale's, and one for a car lease. They were flagged because your social security number was already under review." I closed my eyes, fury and disbelief swirling together. Vanessa, of course. Cornered animals always lash out. And hers was the most predictable bite of all. Squeeze every last dollar before the clock ran out. "Cancel them immediately," I said firmly. "Mark them as fraudulent. And I want identity theft alerts set up across all 3 credit bureaus. Lock everything down." "Yes, ma'am, but we'll also need a police report. Are you prepared to pursue this legally?" I hesitated, staring at the city beyond my window. Just this morning, I'd promised myself I wouldn't drag Daniel through public shame. But this was beyond shame. This was a crime. "Yes," I said at last. "File it. I'll cooperate fully." The call ended, and I stood frozen, the weight of the decision settling over me. For years, I had let guilt paralyze me. Let love excuse theft. Let silence excuse disrespect. But now, I felt none of that. Only resolve. I dialed Frank immediately. "Prepare everything," I told him. "The loans, the false accounts, all of it. If Vanessa wants to test me, she'll find out I'm not just her mother-in-law. I'm the woman who built an empire from nothing. And I'll burn down every lie she's built on my name." Frank exhaled slowly. "Then we'll move forward. Just be ready, Margaret. Once this starts, there's no going back." "No," I said, my voice cold but steady. "There's only moving forward." And forward came quickly. The next morning, 2 detectives knocked on my door with a folder full of Vanessa's crimes and a single chilling question: did I want her arrested? It's one thing to fantasize about justice, it's another to see it standing on your doorstep in a badge and uniform. At 9:15 the next morning, the doorbell rang. Through the peephole, I saw 2 men in suits, their badges glinting in the hallway light. My heart thudded as I opened the door. "Mrs. Whitmore?" the taller one asked. "Detectives Alvarez and Green, Financial Crimes Division. We'd like to speak with you." I ushered them in, my pulse quickening. They set a thick folder on my dining table, the kind that seemed to hold entire lives between its covers. Detective Alvarez flipped it open. "We've traced multiple fraudulent accounts back to your daughter-in-law, Vanessa Wallace. Store credit, utility accounts, loan applications. Your son's signature appears on several documents as well." I swallowed hard, though I'd already suspected as much. "And what does that mean?" "It means," Detective Green said carefully, "you have a prosecutable case. If you file charges, we can arrest Mrs. Wallace for identity theft and fraud. Depending on the prosecutor, your son may also face charges as an accomplice." The words landed like stones in my chest. Vanessa in handcuffs I could imagine easily. Daniel? My son. My baby, even at 39. I still saw the boy who once brought me dandelions from the yard. Detective Alvarez slid a pen across the table. "The choice is yours, ma'am. Do you want to move forward?" I stared at the pen, my mind a whirlwind. On one side, justice, dignity, protection. On the other, the ruin of my son's future. The scars it would leave on Sophia and Jacob. My hands trembled. If I press charges, the children. "Children adapt," Green said gently. But victims? Victims suffer until someone says enough. Enough. The word echoed in my ears, heavy as a gavel. I looked from the folder to the detectives, my jaw tightening. 15 years of humiliation, 15 years of lies, and now, a line in the sand I could not step back from. I need one night, I whispered, just one night to decide. They exchanged a glance, then nodded. We'll return tomorrow morning, but understand, Mrs. Whitmore, this doesn't disappear. It only grows. As they left, the folder remained on my table like a loaded weapon, waiting for me to pull the trigger. That night, staring at the folder by candlelight, I finally realized, pressing charges wasn't about revenge. It was about legacy. Some decisions aren't about punishment, they're about what story gets told after you're gone. That night, I sat at my dining table with nothing but a candle burning and the folder of Vanessa's crimes spread open before me. Page after page of forged signatures, false accounts, and stolen identity. It was like watching my life's work, my name, my reputation, reduced to a tool in her greedy hands. But the more I stared at the evidence, the more I realized, this wasn't about her anymore. It wasn't even about Daniel. It was about Sophia and Jacob. What lesson would I leave them? That it's acceptable to let people rob you blind in the name of family. That silence is safer than truth? Or would I show them that even love has boundaries, and that respect must be earned? Not bought? I took a deep breath, picked up the pen, and wrote my name across the final line of the report. My hand didn't shake, my heart didn't break. For the first time in years, I felt free. The next morning, when Detectives Alvarez and Green returned, I handed them the signed papers. Do what you have to do, I said simply. They nodded, professional and solemn, and just like that, justice was set in motion. Weeks later, I sat with Sophia and Jacob at my kitchen table. We ate pancakes, laughed about Jacob's soccer team, and listened to Sophia talk about her new babysitting job. They weren't asking for money anymore, they were sharing pieces of themselves. And I realized something. I hadn't lost a family. I had finally gained one. The lesson? Love without respect is exploitation. Generosity without boundaries is abuse. And silence in the face of humiliation is surrender. For 15 years, I gave everything to people who gave me nothing but contempt. But when I finally said enough, I discovered that true love, real, lasting, unconditional, doesn't come from what you buy. It comes from what you teach. I didn't just save myself. I saved the future. Because sometimes, the bravest word a woman can say is no.